Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So welcome to another edition of Face to Face. I'm joined today by a special guest, and believe it or not, in Chiang Mai, on location in Chiang Mai, April. I was going to say it's May, but April 2013 at a conference, and I'm sitting here with I would say a social entrepreneur by the name of Xianyi Wu. He's from Hong Kong. Educated at Stanford, but I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about his story, and he's got a pretty fascinating story. He's a designer, mechanical engineer, and a guy who was responsible for founding a company called d.light. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So the listeners who have heard me before speak in the past, they can hear the smile and the passion in my voice. Tell me a little bit about your company, so I can hope that some of my listeners can start feeling the same way.
Right.
Tell me a little bit more about what you guys are doing.
d.light Design makes solar lights, solar lanterns for people who live without electricity. They usually live in off-grid areas. They might live in areas where you have some amount of grid, which is not really reliable. The concept is really, really simple. Typically, these people burn kerosene in their houses at night for their lighting needs. And it could be, for anything from housework to cooking to kids who are studying. And kerosene is very bad for you. There's all kinds of respiratory diseases that you can have from burning kerosene. You can burn yourself. You can burn your house down, which has happened. And, it releases a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So really, you take our lights, you put it out in the sun, you charge it all day, and you bring it in the evening, and you can use the light from, anywhere from 4 to 8 to 16 hours, depending on the product that you have. And it's a lot better quality light for kids to study by.
Over and above like a kerosene lantern.
Over a kerosene lantern, yeah.
Like a broader range of light, or is it just a brighter light? Or
it's brighter, and it is a brighter range, and it's a better quality. I mean, with kerosene is that really orangey glow that you have, and It's flickering and it's moving around. But you have a steady, constant. We use 5,000 to 6,000 Kelvin there around, which is meant to replicate natural sunlight, natural daylight.
And for the village idiots in the room, what is 5,000 Kelvin? What does that equal?
It's the color temperature of the light. And, let's say 5,500 kelvins would be about what you would get at a noonday sun.
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah. You mean from a charging perspective?
No. The color temperature of the LED, of the light.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow,
So
that's awesome.
The color of the light, you have an incandescent is yellow.
Yeah, sure.
So that's like 3,000, 2,000.
I see.
And then you have fluorescent, it tends to be 6,000, 7,000. Right?
Yeah, you're talking about this stuff like it's just, everybody knows this, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So it was funny. I was reading a review online while I was doing some research about your product, and this particular gentleman was, clearly a bit of a geek and a techie, and commented about how good your product was, and talked about the quality of the LED light. And he said, "Don't be mistaken. This isn't like a lot of the other crappy models out there." So there is this sense of where LED just doesn't cut it, right?
Right.
But
well, what we were fighting against before, and when we started this company, what we were trying to solve for was that a lot of these places in developing countries, in rural India, rural Africa, have exposure to LED lights or to, battery-powered lights. But they're crappy. They're made in China, not well designed, made with a lot of regrind plastic, which is plastic that would break the moment you drop it on the floor.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. And, you can buy for cheap, but you get what you pay for. It'll break in a couple of weeks. And so they're used to that. This is their expectation. So really what we're trying to do is to say, no, we're going to treat our customers, our consumers, as people who deserve good products, well designed, well thought through products which are manufactured well, have quality checks and quality control. And when you put in your hard-earned cash to buy it, it's going to last you. And so much so now that we say it'll last you, we warranty our products for 2 years, which is unheard of.
Which is amazing for a product like this in the Global South. Now you say, crappy, and then you said made in China. Now these products are made in China, right?
They are. Of course you have to qualify that because you have Apple products and Sony products which are also made in China.
Sure.
So you can have good products that are made in China, but there is this made in China perception,
of course,
in Africa and India that anytime you say made in China, it's, I don't want it. I'm not going to buy it. And you could go to them and say, but my iPhone is made in China. It's just kind of, it's beyond them, right?
There's a disconnect.
There's already this entrenchment that anything made in China is bad. So we've gone a long way. I mean, Apple was probably the first one to address this. We say, designed in California, and then in small print, made in China. I think a lot of companies, including ours, have taken that lead on that.
So when you and I bumped into each other in the buffet line at this conference, when you started talking to me about your company and what it was that you did, and I've worked in international development for a few years now, and I teach and so on, and I've certainly met a lot of social entrepreneurs and people who are trying to make a difference with products and so on, and growing these types of philanthro-capitalistic like businesses. And I imagine, this guy, they're struggling and they're just getting off the ground and they've got 5 or 10 employees, but the reality is you're in over 40 countries. 100 employees, and tell me a little bit more about your reach and your sales.
Yeah, we've been we track our metrics by the number of lives impacted. In this conference, we've been talking a lot about quadruple bottom line, right? Let's see if we can remember the economic, social, environmental, and the spiritual bottom lines.
Triple bottom line is people, planet, profit.
Right.
Typically, right?
Yeah, typically. And then, because it is a Christian conference, we have a spiritual component to that as well. So I would say d.light, has those first three. And we measure, the social part of it by the number of lives that we've impacted. We just celebrated 10 million lives impacted, and we have these metrics on the website. I think.
Yeah, I've actually. Can I quote them for you?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
15,151,430 lives empowered. 3,787,858 school-age children reached with solar lighting.
Yeah.
$339,337,435 saved in energy-related expenses. This is crazy. 4,230,485,000. Anyone tired of the numbers yet? And 70 productive hours created for working and studying. Right. 785,000 or so tons of CO2 offset. And this is crazy. 11 million and change kilowatt hours generated from renewable energy sources. Right. I'm looking at one of these, and you'll be able to see them online. But I mean, it looks like a cup with a solar chip on the top. It's really, really quite incredible. I mean, those are crazy numbers. I mean, development workers, bilateral donors, businessmen and women around the world. I mean, they must be excited by this.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of people are watching what we're doing and where we're going with this, and just kind of rooting for us as well, just to see that, it's possible. It's possible to go out there and make a profit while you're doing very good social change work and selling social products. And that was the heart of how we started. We started out of Stanford in the D school, and the class we were in was called Design for Extreme Affordability. How might we be 10% of the world's designers that design for 90% of the world's poorest people, instead of what you typically have, which is 90% of the world's designers designing for the world's richest 10%.
Hang on. So say that again.
Typically, how might we be? Yeah, typically you have 90% of your world's designers, product designers, designing for 10% of the world's richest people.
Right. Okay.
How might we be 10% of the world's designers designing for 90% of the world's poorest people?
And when you say richest people, you mean people like you and I, really. You're not talking about that 1%. You're talking about people who make a decent wage, who can afford most items.
Okay. If you own a computer, you're probably in that category.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah. So flip it completely on its head, and
Yeah.
how can we start the other way? Talk about a sort of a grassroots approach right out of the gate.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much thought and dialogue that's going on about this right now, right? Now, fortunately, at the bottom of the pyramid, right? You treat the billions of people on this planet who aren't as rich as that 10% as customers, as people who have spending power, as people who have the ability to buy and pay for your products. They don't have as much money, but they are consumers. They are people who can vote with their dollar in a sense. So we believe fundamentally that by treating them as our customers, we're giving them dignity, right? It's a form of justice actually, that you're not going to get the handouts, you're not going to get the crappy leftovers. We're going to treat you as the people that we think about all day long, that we're designing for, and people that we just want to make kick-ass products for.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what's kind of blown me away is your price points are kind of ridiculous. I mean, your entry level light's $8.95, and that's retail. Like I could buy it for that. And then your next one up is what, $15.95 or $13.95, and then about $40, which is like the high end model, which you can actually also charge a cell phone off of,
Right.
from solar power.
Right. Yeah.
And it's actually pretty unbelievable.
It's
I don't know how you've done it so cheaply. I guess it gets into economies of scale and quantities, I suppose, manufactured.
Yeah, I think we started right from the beginning with this kind of militant mindset to get costs out. Because if you don't really go into every single component, every part of the product and say, how can I squeeze out every penny of this? You'll just never be able to do it. I think the traditional approach is you come in there and it's a bit they've created products. There have been solar products that have existed for a couple of decades before us,
right?
But they've way over designed, right? They're made by NGOs. They make all kinds of assumptions of how much light is actually needed, and therefore you need this size solar panel, and you come in there with $100 product.
Right.
And nobody's going to afford that, right? Nobody can afford that. So we've come in with a different kind of mindset. What is, it's not going to be the brightest light. If you're living in the first world, this is not going to replace what you have in your house. But what do they need, right? If I'm sitting right next to this light and doing my homework, is there sufficient light for us?
Yeah.
And we found that this, you design to that, right? Instead of over designing.
Did you do any kind of needs assessment before you started building the product? Did you go into some of these rural communities? I read somewhere, and it might have been on your site, that the way the genesis for the project was a trip to Myanmar, and you saw children using candles.
Yeah, right.
Not kerosene, but candles, and that was sort of where you guys said, hey, we need to make a difference here.
Yeah. The mindset that we come from is sort of this Stanford design thinking, / IDEO mindset, which is what we call need finding, and you employ user empathy, right, where you have to go and walk a mile in the user's shoes, go and observe them, and to be with them and to talk to them and to see if what they say and what they do actually matches up. And
is that Xian, is that from a consumer perspective? It's entirely from a consumer's perspective, because from a development perspective, or a consultant who might work in capacity building, they'd say it would be appreciative inquiry. I'm going to go into a community. I'm going to listen to the men and the women and the boys and the girls, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, I'm not going to just go to the men, because that would be troubling and or problematic for so many reasons cross-culturally. But through appreciative inquiry, a lot of questions, a lot of listening, we're going to come away. So same sort of thing, but from a consumer's perspective. Yeah. What would you buy? What would you use? Right. Well, is that what user empathy would be?
It would be. I mean, I think the design approach here is we always talk about prototyping. So, having something in their hands, you could go and observe, like, okay, they are using kerosene lanterns right now, and how do they use them, and and then giving them a prototype, right? Something that you just, you put together for a few dollars that you think might be representative of a good alternative for them. And you put it in their hands and you say, okay, well, is there an aha moment there, right? Is there something that immediately, like, wow, they just start doing differently because they have this new thing? And then we talk about iterating, right? If maybe it's just a little bit off, could you just tweak that a little bit and have that iterative product process in there? I think the big part of the Stanford design approach is the willingness to fail. When you have a prototype that fails, and you know why it fails, then you can learn from that. I think too often we're like, oh, you have to go in there with the perfect thing. But no, you're never going to get it right the first time. It's okay to go in there and fail, but learn from those failures.
How many models did you go through before you came up with the one sitting on the coffee table here now?
Oh, well, these are our later products. The original ones that we had 2 different prototypes that we first went to Myanmar with. And we tried those out. And then later on, once we got funding, we launched one, and then we changed it, and then we changed it again. Oh, probably the S300 would be in probably about its 8th or 9th iteration.
Wow.
From what we first started out with.
I don't know if you've studied any philosophy or read any Pascal, but his father was an accountant. And they designed the Pascaline. Have you heard of the Pascaline?
No.
Oh, you got to punch it up on the net. It's this you'd love it as a mechanical engineer. It's this fascinating. It's his first calculator, first computer, basically. And I think they went through 60 different designs before they actually came. This is like around the time of Descartes, for heaven's sake, 1640, something like that. So you guys started, and in eight basically iterations later, you came up with this version here. So are you the brains in the group? Is that you described yourself as not being the sales guy? You're the mechanical engineer. You're the guy with the drawings, the dimensions, the electrical side, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I want to say I'll put it under the umbrella of like product design. Mechanical engineer by training. I've worked on the industrial designs for our earliest products. Then the mechanical designs, and then moved to China to get it into production and do the manufacturing for that, and then did a lot of the project program management from then on. So I mean, it's a startup, right? So I have a very wide range of things that I did. Oh, including our first website, not to mention, and the IT for the office.
Wow.
So it's I wear many different hats. Since we've gotten to 100 people, I've really just hunkered down and started to focus more on the product design. And to continue on, this need finding user research, trying to figure out, okay, what else can we be working on?
So you're looking at other products.
Other
ideas.
Of course,
yeah. Oh, hey, speaking of design and products, we got to go back to the there's a little point of contact on the side of one of these lights that I'm looking at right now. It looks like a little jack that you would put into an iPod or something along those lines, but it's smaller than that. So this, tell me about this little connector. It was I think you mentioned it was meant to be charged as well off of a cell phone.
Yeah. So all 3 of these products have a little 0.5 mm charger, which you can charge with a Nokia phone charger. Typically, it's the same model that you would get in the middle of Africa or the middle of India. The cell phone industry has been actually really, really booming in these areas, and Nokia for a while was the market leader.
Yes.
They've got plenty of competition now because
I know the phone. I think I can hear the ring. I remember coming to Singapore for the first time and seeing all these young kids with Nokia phones.
Right.
And they were really nice size too, and they had this very distinctive ring to them. And every now and then you still hear them in a lobby of a hotel or in an airport. But you're probably right. It's probably shifted a little bit.
In developing countries, in developing India and Africa, it's still that same phone. They still use that charger, and so these lights, if you have some amount of grid availability to grid or nearbyness of grid, you can go there and charge them instead of relying just purely on solar.
And by grid, you just mean access to an outlet that's giving you fairly clean electricity for any given amount of time.
Or a generator. I mean, some people run generators.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you a little bit about a project that I was involved in and still am in Cambodia, Lavia M District, and this organization called Asian Outreach had built a maternity clinic there. And one of the problems was they were finding that women, maternal health care workers living in the jungle, 8, 10, 12 hours a day would be accessible because of light. And then ultimately you couldn't find them. So mortality rates were going up as a result of this. So
they couldn't find the clinics.
Couldn't find the clinic, which really was like a hut. Which is, Mrs. So-and-so lived in the middle of nowhere, but I could get to her 8 or 10 hours a day because I could see where she was. But because I didn't have, a flashlight or whatever the case might be.
Or Google Maps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I couldn't get there, and so it was adding a whole other level of complexity. So a Japanese company came in, NGO, I think, and they ended up installing solar panels on the
Mm.
top with a light that just sat outside.
Hmm.
But I think it would be, and I don't know the numbers, but it would have been a pretty expensive application. It sounds like this is the kind of thing that you hang two of those from the side of a village hut. You could easily see that from a distance. Could
Oh
you not?
yeah,
Yeah,
especially in pitch darkness. I mean, light just goes, it just like pierces right through it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What I love about the light is, I mean, I do have to tell you, going forward, I'm going to be looking for ways of using your product,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
so you know, and I'm going to be telling everybody about it. But I'm going to unscrew it again here. And when I looked at it, when I first opened it up, I asked you the question about where's the light.
yeah.
It's just so simple. It's insane, actually, to me from a creative perspective and a design perspective. I know nothing about it, but there's this little square, looks like a piece of tape.
A couple of millimeters across, couple of
It's
millimeters.
not even
very,
a
very
light
small.
bulb.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So I mean, were you guys responsible for actually creating any of this technology yourselves, or was this just taking things that were already out there
Hmm.
and bringing them together?
We took things that were out there, and also I think right when we started around 2006, 2007, I mean, really was this inflection point of the cost of LEDs was coming way down and the efficiencies were going way up. And same for the solar panels as well. And we really just hit it right at that sweet spot where just putting it all together in a very well thought through way, which I think really just hit it out of the park.
Is what's your opinion on solar technology? I mean, is it going to save us to some degree? Is it going to save the environment? I remember somebody saying that to charge a certain part of the states, you would have to cover all of Texas with solar
Right.
panels.
Yeah.
Sounds a little unreasonable to me.
Yeah.
Is it getting better?
It is getting better. There are a lot of very, very smart people in the world working on, improving the efficiencies such that, you could have more energy coming out of a smaller amount of area, and different ways of applying that. I think it's going to be, as far as, all of clean tech is concerned, it's going to be a combination of a bunch of different very creative ideas and ways of solving it.
When you say a combination, you mean like wind power and solar power, kind of, from a clean power?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like wind and solar, or, biofuels.
Yeah, it's not going to be an either or
Right.
approach.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit more about the genesis, the start of this idea. You got this small group of guys studying at Stanford. You're all in the same class.
Yep.
And yeah, can you unpack the history of it a little bit for me? But I'm fascinated by how it started. I mean, it's awesome. Where does the trip, the Myanmar, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you had a real serious passion and commitment and focus as well that a lot of, I was going to say a lot of people lack, but I don't know that they necessarily lack it. I just sometimes wonder if they haven't uncovered it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there were 5 founders, we were all classmates at Stanford, and we had this class. We came up with this very same idea, or very similar to it, right? Which is replacing kerosene lanterns with cheap, affordable light, and at a very low cost. The model would be sell lots and lots of them at a low cost, and that's how you make your money. Very simple. And the class ended, we went off to do our summer jobs, and we came back in the fall, and we met up. I still remember sitting on the Stanford quad and just thinking, hey, you guys want to take this forward, right? We think we have something going here, some potential. And we all say, yeah, let's try it out. So, we all had to still continue with our classes, and still, trying to be doing this on the side, which was very, very difficult. And I was the first one to graduate at the end of that year. I think it's the end of 2006. I went to this Christian missions conference called Urbana in 2006, and I was really struggling, right? And I was like, should I go and get a real job, at Google or Apple or whatever? Or should I keep on plugging it at the startup? And keeping in mind, I was an international student, right? So I only had, I think it was 9 months that I could stay in the country before they kicked me out.
Right.
And I remember God saying to me very clearly, it's like, you should do this. I mean, this is very close to my heart, God's heart, right, for doing something which is justice, which is helping people's lives, especially the poor. So I kept plugging on from there.
So it was at this conference there was an epiphany there of a sort.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah.
Did it come out of just a conversation, or was it kind of a moment?
I think it was a process of just
so.
talking with a bunch of different people.
I think often those spiritual moments are right. They're yeah. Sometimes I find traveling can meeting different people and that cross cultural stuff. Anyway, sorry. So you're about to be kicked out by the U.S. government?
Well, no, not quite yet, but. So I remember from then on, I was spending about 12 to 16 hours a day in our Stanford lab, right? Our product realization lab, we call it, where you have to mill in the lathe, and I was doing a lot of vacuum forming.
So you're actually building it.
I'm building these prototypes.
You're not just drawing it and thinking about it.
Well,
you're actually
you do that first, and then
okay,
later on,
okay.
And the prototypes I made out of that, we use both from Myanmar to continue our need finding. And also, my business partners went to go and raise funds with that. And it was through that we won a business plan competition called the Draper Fisher Jurvetson competition.
Sorry, the what?
DFJ, Draper Fisher Jurvetson.
Is that Bill Draper? That's not Ashoka Foundation, is it?
No. It's,
no, that's Drayton. That's Bill Drayton.
Yeah,
I think. Oh, venture capital. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And we ended up winning that competition, which we were finalists with a bunch of some really, really amazing startup ideas. And we ended up winning, which was really unexpected. We won $250,000.
Wow. Okay.
And from there, all the other VCs started to take notice. Again, I think we were at another inflection point, which was people were just starting to get into social enterprise. It's like, okay, social enterprise is cool. It's not just about profit, right? It's environmental, it's clean tech. And so d.light had all of those things. We had all of those things there from the beginning. I think that's what made it quite attractive. So we got venture capital funding, and then from there, we were able to start up. I was able to get a visa, stay in the country, and start seriously building the product, right? Starting to design parts for injection molding and, PCBs, printed circuit boards, and then by the end of that year, 2007, we looked around and said, what are we still doing in California? I mean, our market is in India, is in Africa. Our manufacturing, we looked at manufacturing in the US, and at that time it just didn't make monetary sense because, again, every penny is important for a consumer because. Sure. They earn $1 to $2 to $3 a day, right? I mean, it's so important,
or less in many cases.
So we said, no, let's go to China. So at the end of that year, I moved to Shenzhen, China, to start up the manufacturing operations there, and and I've been there ever since.
So I still find the whole creative process fascinating. Out of 5 guys, were there any of you that were a little more in line with the social entrepreneurship kind of social justice, we're going to change the world approach versus no, the hell with that, I just want to make a lot of money?
No. But I mean, I think we're all completely on board with the mission. And that's one thing that really united us from the beginning. It's such a simple, powerful idea. You can make money and help people at the same time.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think we still have a long way to go with that understanding that business can actually take that on and make a difference in a really positive way. This notion of philanthrocapitalism and corporate social responsibility and so on, I think in some ways is already dying out. I think there's a whole new approach, and that's people are starting to now talk in the field of the conservation economy. And I really like that phrase.
Yeah, what does that mean?
It just means, it's a little bit more holistic. I think it's a little bit more comprehensive to say it's not, this isn't, I think CSR has been demonized almost from a greenwashing perspective. So companies have come in and said, hey, we're going to do this because it looks good.
Yeah.
Not because it's the right thing to do, not because we're actually trying to change the world, but we might do a little bit of that along the way, and that would be great.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be an unexpected outcome. Our real outcome is to look better in the sight of our shareholders. That whole Milton Friedman-like approach to social responsibility of business is to increase profits.
Yeah.
And I think that's slowly shifting. And so I've added another word, the notion of a restorative conservation economy, that we're looking at everything. It's not either or, it's inclusive. There's this embrace. And it sounds kind of corny, I suppose, and tree huggish, I suppose, in some levels. But I think there's a shift occurring, and I'm encouraged by that. You've got speaking of social entrepreneurship and conservation economy and so on. You also have we've got this socially relevant business, but you've also got a program called d.light. And I noticed on your site that you've got some projects in Benin, Burkina Faso. I was there a couple of years ago. Wonderful place. Kenya, been to Kenya, Uganda, Timor-Leste. So can you talk a little bit about that as well and how that's playing out? Is that, I noticed in Kenya, it looked kind of like a Kiva approach almost. There was a group there looking for an amount of money to invest, and they're going to start selling these lamps to support girls' education. Is that right?
I'll be honest with you. I'm not very up to date with what they're doing on that.
Okay.
I know it has traditionally been a thing where we partner with NGOs.
Oh, okay.
There are a lot of areas where the market economy, right, is not really going to work just because,
or at least not yet.
Yeah, just because they're really just that poor. And so as much as we try to have this mantra of like not giving anything away and selling it, I mean, there are, just as, there are a lot of legitimate reasons why you have handouts at NGOs and, working in like medical areas and stuff. So
yeah, of course. Yeah.
In some of these areas, it's
well, the reality is, I mean, the communities I'm thinking of using this in, I'm on my way to Cambodia in a couple of days. I mean, we're talking about 35 and 40 cents a day wage, and even a $15 product, could take them 18 months or longer to save up the money for a $15 product, which, is insane for us to sort of get our head around that. But when you're taking 35 cents a day and using that to live on and to buy maybe clean water and so on, it's pretty troubling.
Yeah, tough,
so how does it work? So NGO comes alongside, sells it for $3 and subsidizes the rest of the
you could do a subsidy approach. You could do a sort of financing approach. Where you have to pay some amount upfront and then you pay the rest back over some amount of time.
And do you have people internally that are working on those kind of plans and approaches?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, you do, eh?
Yeah,
so are you actively seeking them out, or is it people out and nonprofits out, or NGOs out, or is it more that they're coming to you and saying, "Hey, we've heard about your product"?
It's probably a combination of both. I mean, we have I think we have one lady who's full time in DC, who really has all these connections with these sort of NGOs doing this sort of work.
Wow, that's amazing. So what's next? What are you guys working on? Can you talk about it?
Unfortunately, not. But I mean, there's so much that's happening in these areas, and we really, like you said, we are seen as a market leader in many ways. We don't take that for granted because we have a lot of competitors coming up, and they're making some really, really good products. And it's a good thing because we're barely just scratching the surface of the market potential for these products, and the competition keeps us honest. But we don't want to rest on our laurels and just say, okay, 3 products and the truth, and then we just
that's what isn't that right? You too? Isn't that you too? Three chords in the truth.
Yeah,
isn't that what they say?
Truth. Yeah. So we really want to stay at the forefront of the products and the opportunities that are there, and continue innovating and making sure that we're ahead of the curve.
Just before we wrap up, I want to know when the solar-powered BlackBerry is coming out.
Well, would you leave your BlackBerry in the sun?
That's true.
For 12 hours?
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. Maybe it's got to be, maybe 15-minute charge. Put it on the dashboard of my car, and by the time I get to my meeting, it's charged.
Yeah, right.
So one thing that I didn't clarify, I'm about to quote your I guess your chairman, Sam Goldman. Is that right?
No. Well, Sam is one of our founders. He was the CEO. And
okay.
He's kind of a marketing role.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to quote him in a second, but he talks about the thinking. So actually, let's go to the quote. Quote, the passion and the design thinking initially forged at the D School continue to drive the culture and mission of d.light. That's Sam Goldman. Solar lighting, quote, is just the beginning. We see ourselves as a provider of renewable energy in the developing world and will continue to expand our product solutions and distribution networks in the coming years, close quote. The D School, was that your own nickname for it, or was that the design school at Stanford?
This was the design school. This was already the name. I mean, started by David Kelly from IDEO.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, a bit of a lofty goal, it seems to me, Sam. But it sounds to me, based on just getting to know you just a little bit in the last day and just over these 40 minutes, I think you guys clearly have a passion that I just hope some of our listeners resonate with. And I mean, I have 80 students that I teach every year at international development, and I always say, when we're looking at something like results-based management and the log frame, which is incredibly difficult and complicated and just wordy and hard to write. And I say, guys, one or two of you are going to go on to rewrite how this is actually done. And I've had students come to me and say they find that kind of invigorating. And, I love the fact, David, that you kind of believe in us. And whether or not they're actually going to do it is unclear. But I think maintaining that sense of passion and drive is so important. And it seems to me your company has kept it, but you certainly have kept it.
I think you have to. It's really, really, really hard work because you're working in areas that just don't have that infrastructure and the things that you would be used to in a fully developed country, and so it just requires a lot of perseverance, a lot of determination, a lot of passion.
Elizabeth Barrett Browning said that if our reach doesn't exceed our grasp, then what's a heaven for? It sounds like you guys have kind of taken that approach, and I think that's awesome. Thank you for joining us here today on Face to Face. And do you want to just give us your website? Is it d.light.com?
Yeah, d.lightdesign.com. d.light is spelled D-L-I-G-H-T. Design.com, no space, no dash.
Check them out on the web. We'll definitely have a link on our site. And thanks for joining us here in Chiang Mai with Xianyi Wu and your lovely and talented host. Talk to you soon.